You're listening to Raw, 12:51 AM, bringing you your favourite shows 24/7.
You lot are locked into Tux Tuesdays.
You listen to the Daisy and Amy show.
This is Living Up the Weekend at 1 o'clock.
Hear the best new music.
You and your love for Taylor Swift.
No, don't. That's gone out on air now.
Stay informed with Raw News Update.
Certainly we're one of the few universities in the country who get to sit on the University Senate.
Some people have viewed this protest as a reaction to one person, which can seem like a bit of a witch hunt. What would you say to those people?
Keep the score with our daily sports analysis.
They have dug deep. They have equalised. Warwick 6, Coventry 6.
Discover the best on-campus talent.
This is the show where we bring on creative writing homegrown at Warwick.
Sitting on a bridge, looking at a broken edge at the gap too far to jump and the drop too far below.
And follow us as we go outside the studio.
I'm Lauren and I'm sitting with the beautiful Foxes. How are you doing? I'm well, thank you. How are you?
If you've been asleep, you have so missed out.
You're listening to Raw, 12:51 AM. This is your student radio station.
Good afternoon and welcome to Perspectives' first show of this term, Term 3, as part of the Warwick Politics Society. We are joined by a fantastic panel today. I'm joined by Niall Johnson, who is my fellow host. Niall, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Henry. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you very much for being on. And in terms of the panellists, we have two Sams. I'll just get them to introduce themselves. So first, we'll start off with the first year, Sam Keeling. Sam, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Sam Keeling. I'm a first year English literature student, and my favourite MP is Jacob Rees-Mogg. So yeah, you can probably tell which way I lean politically based upon that, so don't hate me too much.
And moving on to the other Sam now. Sam, tell us about yourself.
Okay, so I'm Sam Berkson, or for the ease of the presenter, I can be Berko for today if it's easier.
Who would you say your favourite MP is?
Favourite MPs.
We've sprung that upon you, sorry.
I have to go with my local, who I voted for, which is Frank Field MP, Member of Parliament for Birkenhead, Labour MP.
But what do you
think? Is he even a Labour MP?
Yeah, what do you think about Frank Field's Eurosceptic position?
No. In a word, no. But he's an old wise man. He's not got many years left. He's had a couple of heart attacks as it is. So
has he really?
Yeah.
We shouldn't be laughing at that. And moving on to Alistair. No, Alistair, tell us about yourself.
I'm Alistair. I'm a history and politics student, first year. I'm a libertarian, and my favourite MP would probably be Douglas Carswell.
Ooh, I can hear you hissing at home to that already. And don't forget, you can get involved in the show today. It is every Tuesday from 3 to 4. And just to let you know, we have a range of interviews coming up, including from various mayoral candidates, including Sadiq Khan, George Galloway, Sian Berry, and a range of other ones. So stay tuned for that in future weeks.
Very exciting. I think you've just about met every single London Mayoral candidate over the Easter holidays.
I've done a lot of stalking, all right? I haven't done any.
I didn't even know George Galloway was running.
Yeah, no, he is allegedly polling on 0% behind the Britain First candidate, whose name escapes me.
Paul Golding.
Paul Golding, that's it. So there we go. Let's see. That'll be an interesting one. Who comes third?
I think he might receive a bit of a surge at the polling stations. I think when people go to vote to see George Galloway,
Well, let's touch on that briefly. One thing about Galloway is, obviously, in terms of Corbyn and John McDonnell, he is ideologically similar, one would argue, to them than Sadiq Khan is. Can you see a lot of Labour supporters who are registered who voted for Corbyn turning out for Galloway rather than Khan? We'll go to our Frank Field fan over here, Sam.
I've actually met George Galloway at a social event. And I thought,
was this a Labour event?
No. This was a family friend's party.
Oh, wow.
He wasn't drinking, I assume.
He wasn't drinking out of someone's hand, trying to be a cat like he was on Big Brother that time.
Yes.
I don't like George Galloway's position on foreign policy, I do have to say, but I don't see him in the same bracket as a Jeremy Corbyn or a John McDonnell.
That's interesting.
But I've only ever known him as George Galloway, the leader of the Respect Party. I've never associated him with I didn't even think he was in their kind of like school of thought.
So you probably don't think that many Labour supporters who perhaps are very, who like Corbyn would turn out for Galloway. You think they stick to their guns?
I think they're far more focused on making sure there's a Labour Mayor of London.
Okay, that's interesting. Rather than somebody who can't win.
Yeah, just because if there's a risk of Zach Goldsmith getting in, or a perceived risk that them voting for George Galloway would mean another Conservative mayor, or they might just want to send a message to the government with recent things such as junior doctors or whatever, almost like, okay, well, we're going to say
I think
a Labour guy in there.
I think that for Labour supporters who would be thinking clearly, London is such a huge battlefield for them going forwards. It's the first major election being fought under Corbyn's leadership, and that will be the first place that they've got to sort of garner support. I mean, London is naturally left-leaning. If it doesn't work there, you've got to think of the national implications. And I think that Galloway, I don't know what others think, it's just another opportunistic, sort of ego-driven candidacy.
Well, I mean, I think he has announced that he will be standing for Tooting should Sadiq Khan win and obviously a by-election be forced. But that seems like quite a winnable seat, actually, for someone like George Galloway. Alistair, what do you think about Galloway's candidacy? Do you think Corbyn supporters will be sort of tempted or flirt with the idea of voting for George Galloway?
I've always assumed that Galloway's appeal is really been to do with his positions on foreign policy, the Iraq War, and his win in I think it was the Bradford West constituency, if I remember correctly. Yeah, that was I very much, I think, a consequence of the fact that, without putting too fine a point on it, a lot of the electorate were of ethnic groups descended from immigrants from areas that he was basically advising politicians to not invade. So that was much more, I feel, of consequence than his actual, left or right position economically.
Do you think that could have the same effect if he was to stand in Tooting?
I'm not sure of the kind of the ethnic makeup of Tooting, but if it is, the similar, then I could completely see that.
It's very ethnically diverse, Tooting, but I sort of get the impression that in London that sort of campaigning isn't as effective. I think that I don't know. It's a view I hold that the London electorate is a bit more tolerant and sort of, I don't know. Yeah, has a wider outlook.
I think that's true, and I think it's becoming more of a divide between the levels of tolerance in London versus the rest of the country. I think people in London not only tolerate but appreciate the fact that they live with lots of varying minorities, whereas I think there's an awful lot of resentment in other areas of the country.
You'd assume, though, that if Labour chose the right candidate, he wouldn't have a problem. So I know Ken Livingstone has been sort of rumoured to be standing in that seat should Sadiq Khan, win the mayoral election and resign. That would be something that, I mean, he would really combat the sort of left-wing appeal of Galloway, wouldn't he? Sam, do you think George Galloway has any chance of being London mayor, very briefly?
No, I don't. Because something that Sam said that resonated was I don't think lefties and people who are generally leaning towards Labour and the kind of political ground that George Galloway represents would risk splitting the vote.
Okay.
I think if the greatest chance of getting a left-wing mayor would be to vote Sadiq Khan, and I think they'd rather do that than vote Galloway and split and divide the vote, because that would be an easy victory for Zach Goldsmith, I think, if that were to happen.
And if we were to believe the Conservative campaigning, Jeremy Corbyn's regime will just be instigated through Sadiq Khan, or his experiment.
That's been the subject of a lot of controversy, hasn't it? Zach Goldsmith's campaigning. We were speaking briefly, Niall, about the race for third perhaps being the most important in this election, because you've got two candidates, Sadiq Khan and Zach Goldsmith, who, whether you like it or not, from an outsider looking in, aren't the most ideologically opposed. I mean, you had before Boris Johnson and Ken Livingstone, who are obviously the polar opposites, and with these two, there's not too much to split them, and so the race for third, I mean, we've never had a UKIP candidate doing so well in London. I know Peter Whittle's polling at third place, and obviously, Sean Berry of the Greens has a good chance of coming third, Caroline Pidgeon of the Lib Dems, maybe even George Galloway.
Do you know what kind of percentages you're talking about for UKIP and Greens?
I think UKIP are polling at about 7%, Greens were on 6%.
Okay. I think Lib Dems are 5%, just below.
5%, yeah. On that, does anyone have any opinions on who they think will finish in third place? I'll open that up to anyone. No?
I've got a feeling that UKIP could come in third, just because London is such a wide berth. Like it's such a big area now. There's a lot of people on the outskirts of London, sort of the home counties, who may be more likely to be influenced by UKIP's appeal. I think also just because the Lib Dems lost all but one of their London seats, they're in decline in London at the minute. Green Party, people will vote for them, but I think a lot of Green voters may also be swayed to vote Labour for
because of Corbyn's effect.
Yes,
possibly. That'd be very interesting how the Greens finish up.
So I think speaking as someone from Merseyside, and we've only recently had mayoral elections for Mayor of Liverpool. I think if you're outside Greater London or the home counties, this whole mayor election, I don't think people are that interested or engaged with it. They see it as more like a symbolic thing, what messages it's sending to the government. I feel quite far removed from it. I always thought when Boris Johnson got voted and re-elected as mayor, that was because London, my perception of it was that it was quite conservative leaning, but then general election results obviously contradicted that. And then I was thinking, if it was someone other than Boris, would it be a Tory at all? But because I feel like, a bit like Liverpool, most people have quite left-wing views, so it would always be Labour every time if it wasn't such a character like Boris. But in terms of the third place thing, I think with the referendum coming up, UKIP are almost, they're not going to have a place really in, do we still think that they're going to have a place in British political discourse after the 23rd of June? Because their whole USP is the in or out of Europe, and once the vote's been done, whichever way, whether we vote to stay in or to leave, their narrative is redundant.
Could well be. That is certainly an interesting issue to chew on in future weeks. And now, just our final sort of introduction. This introduction, I appreciate, has gone on for quite a while. Niall, obviously the show is called Perspectives. Would you like to just explain to us what Perspectives is as our co-editor?
Definitely. I think 19 minutes in is definitely an appropriate time to explain a bit of context to what's going on. Me and Elizabeth Pugsley are the co-editors of Perspectives magazine, which is a magazine run by the Politics Society. It's a current affairs, international affairs magazine. We aim to publish a magazine twice every term, but we're constantly updating our website and Facebook page. So any articles that people are interested in writing, feel free to like the Facebook page, message me, Niall Johnson, or Elizabeth Pugsley, and we can get you on track. Writers don't need any prior experience. We just want to hear your views on things. We don't like to tell you what to write. We just like to hear what you've got to say and give Warwick students a voice.
And on that, you were saying that the mayoral election, the deadline for articles on that is the 1st of May, I believe.
Yes.
So if you were intrigued by what we were talking about.
At the minute, we would love articles on the mayoral election. Any views? Do you support George Galloway? I know we've probably given George Galloway more exposure than any other news outlet in this last 15 minutes. What do you think of Zach Goldsmith's negative campaigning? Do you think Sadiq Khan could be a strong mayor? Is he going to keep flip-flopping? We'd love to hear your views. And also on the EU referendum, which is potentially an even more important issue. What definitely is nationally, isn't it? So
exactly.
Do get in touch.
There we go. Get writing for Perspectives. We're just going to go to a quick song now by Iggy Pop, but before that, don't forget you can get involved in the conversation today by tweeting the Politics Society, which is at Warwick Polsoc, or messaging any of us if you know any of us personally, or messaging the Facebook page, or finally, if you are listening online, to Raw. There is a contact tab on the right of the screen. Click that, put in your name and put in your message. Anything we've been talking about, we'd love to hear your views.
There's really no excuse not to get in touch.
Exactly.
In a world where students had to save tirelessly to see good movies, there was just one award-winning society who could save the day.
Warwick Student Cinema is here to help. Showing blockbusters, classics and independent films at outstanding value. And if you volunteer, you can see all of these for free, as well as having the opportunity to work in front of house or learn the art of projection. To find out more, go to filmsoc.warwick.ac.uk.
A banker, a Daily Mail reader and a benefits claimant are sitting at a table with 12 biscuits. The banker takes 11 biscuits and tells the mail reader to watch out as the benefits claimant is after his biscuit. Brilliant.
Just a bit of George Galloway there, in case you were wondering
brilliant.
who that was. Not his finest joke.
Can I have that as my ringtone?
Every time you get a text.
Quick,
so never.
We had a message in from Sean Jaw who says, can you talk about the 96, which obviously relates to the Hillsborough incident? No.
Yes, we are going to talk about the Hillsborough inquest, which ruled today that the 96 victims of the disaster were unlawfully killed. Which, you know, Sam, as a Liverpool fan yourself, is about time.
I'm not a Liverpool fan.
You are a
Liverpool
fan, really.
I'm an avid fan of Tranmere Rovers, and Liverpool are my second team. The Hillsborough thing, unlawful killing, surprise, surprise, you know, tell us something we don't know. I come from a position where there's a lot of anger, and I've grown up around a lot of anger. When you walk around Liverpool city centre or the Wirral surrounding areas, every shop, don't buy the Sun, what have you, and obviously just would like to take this moment just to pay tribute to the families of the victims who fought for what has been way too long to get this verdict. I think it's David Cameron talked of the double injustice, firstly of the deaths, and then the way that it was covered up, and the police and the tabloid newspapers sort of in cahoots with each other, trying to blame the Liverpool supporters instead of saying we acted irresponsibly and we are liable for these deaths. And in this verdict, whilst I'm glad the verdict has finally happened, we have to make sure that these things never happen again, and also remember that in amongst all this talk of who's guilty and who's what, 96 people died on that fateful day in 1989, so we must remember them.
Exactly. Well, all the revelations have come out. The overall match commander, Chief Superintendent David Duckenfield, has come out and said that obviously at the time Liverpool fans were blamed as being drunken hooligans who had invaded the stadium and gone on to cause the trouble, but in fact the gates had been opened by the police, and it was gross misconduct on their behalf. But it's taken 27 years for these revelations to come out. Alistair, is this just far too long? It's rumbled on for far too long.
Yeah, I think the time taken, you can see that as a consequence of Thatcher government's mentality towards the case, which was basically, as they had done previously in the miners' strikes and various other incidents, which was to support the police no matter what they did, and then deal with it internally. Or not, as the case might be. And once you reach a certain amount of time after an incident, you do get the feeling that the government wants to put it to bed and not have it dragging on. And it's a credit to the families and their lawyers that they really have persisted in getting the justice that they deserve on this one.
I would also like to add, Thatcher was always sought to brush Liverpool as a city under the carpet. She was quite happy to let it go to ruin before Michael Heseltine sort of stepped in, and because there were many riots in Liverpool during the 80s to do with her policies. And I think if it wasn't Liverpool fans, if it was fans of another club, would they have been treated the same? And Thatcher was always very not anti-Liverpool as such, but apathetic towards it, didn't realise its value. And I think what it showed Thatcher in the 80s when we rose up then, and now how the families have fought all this time, is don't mess with Liverpool and the people of Liverpool, because you will come out looking worse.
Do you think that this will have a bit of a legacy now? Do you think that it will help affect policing? Obviously, football stadiums, there was a huge revolution after the Hillsborough disaster with all-seater stadiums being introduced. But do you think that some good can come out of this verdict?
If the only good that can come out of this, as far as I'm concerned, is that people be very wary of the police. I've grown up to never really trust them. I've been brought up very... a lot of police do a lot of good. The people on the beat, stopping crimes from happening, obviously, but as an institution, the guys, the men and women at the top, the chief superintendents or whatever, the suits, if you like, there's a fundamental breakdown of trust in somewhere like Merseyside, and if this can sort of open other people's eyes to corruption that has taken place over a long period of time. And it's not just with Hillsborough, it's been with all sorts of stuff of like killings with racial motivations, going back to the 80s or 90s or whatever. It's just, don't put complete faith in the police to do the right thing.
Definitely. So opening up maybe an inquest into structural issues within policing, but at least justice for the 96 has finally been reached. And Henry, you've now got some news on the NUS and Warwick's possible...
I do indeed, yeah. Just before that, Sam, you had one quick comment you said, apparently.
Just a brief comment regarding the Hillsborough disaster and other sporting catastrophes that have happened around the same time. It is, of course, appalling that 96 people lost their lives, and the police cover-up was also similarly reprehensible. But I think it's also important to remember other catastrophes that occur in relation to sport in which people do lose their lives. I mean, I think the Hillsborough disaster is unique in that there's a great deal of controversy surrounding it, but I just want to draw attention to other such disasters, such as the Bradford City Stadium fire that happened in 1985, in which 56 people lost their lives. So I think it is, on top of acknowledging the importance of this verdict that's been reached following Hillsborough, it's also important to remember the victims of other rather less notorious sporting disasters such as the one aforementioned. So yeah,
indeed.
Now moving on to something a bit closer to home, the NUS and in particular Warwick University. I've just had a message in from our head of news saying that apparently there's a campaign now for Warwick Students' Union to disaffiliate itself from the NUS, something that isn't alien to a lot of us hearing about. I think it was Cambridge that have I think it was the day of the motion, have actually fully said they're sort of disaffiliating with the NUS rather. What do people think about that? Do we think so? This is in light of the election of the president of the NUS, which is a rather controversial issue, with there being a lot of people saying that she's the first black Muslim to serve in the role, I think I'm right in saying.
Yes. And
she also, there's been some controversial remarks regarding Jewish people, I believe, and also in terms of, I don't want to say this, but this is what I read, sympathising with ISIS. Does anyone have any comments on whether they think our students' union should support the NUS, because it's obviously democratically elected, our delegates went, that we voted for to elect that president, or do we think that we can't really support an organisation like the NUS and that it is a failing case? I'll move, Alistair, I know you have strong opinions on this.
Yeah.
What do you think about the NUS as an institution?
Well, somewhere between a shambles and something a bit more malicious. The president, so I mean, she's the new top head of the organisation, and there's been a slightly unhealthy suggestion, I feel, in the air that it's in some way wrong to criticise her for comments she has made, which have very dubious meanings attached to them, on the grounds of the fact that she is, as you say, the first black Muslim to hold the role. Now, to be honest, in my perfect world, which we're very far from, it wouldn't be a cause of celebration that someone was black and Muslim and that they got into a position like that. They should really be celebrated for being good enough to be there in the first place, just on their merit. In addition, the NUS has had a number of other things involving platforming, and some rather dubious things have been said. So yeah, I think we should disaffiliate, basically.
Do you think that some of the new president's comments have slightly been taken out of context, especially due to her previous role as the black students representative? It was a different role, and she was representing different students in more of a liberation capacity. Do you think that maybe she should come out and maybe apologise for some of the stuff she said, and that would then help to rectify issues? Or do you think it's too far gone?
Without wanting to sound naive about this, either she thinks it or she doesn't. Like, if she said it before, she can't claim that she said it because she was in a different role. Either she agrees with what she said, or she's going to disavow it. In which case, fair enough, she's moved on, and her opinions aren't the same, but she has refused to do that. The one which was taken out of context, her refusal to condemn ISIS was essentially the fact that she wanted an amendment on a piece of NUS legislation, I guess you'd call it. But the other things, making comments about the Jewish-controlled media and stuff, and Zionism, it's always going to be dangerous territory, even if you don't mean it. You're putting yourself in a position where you're open to misinterpretation when you say things like that.
Should we have a referendum on it, do you think, Alistair?
A referendum on
for the students to decide whether we should disaffiliate from the NUS?
That would be the sensible way to go, although I do feel if we were going to do it, you would have to have a minimum turnout requirement.
because obviously notoriously elections are quite low at Warwick. Sam, what do you think about the whole NUS president saga?
I have a great deal of respect for what Alistair said about it. I do think that I think we should at least give her a chance, because obviously she's only just started and we don't really know exactly how she's going to perform as NUS president. My prediction is rather inauspicious. I think she's too involved in international politics when her role as NUS president should be one in which she focuses on the experience of students rather than getting involved in internationalist politics. So if she continues down that same line in which she starts making proclamations about Israel and ISIS, I think that we should disaffiliate from her, because her role as the NUS president is to make our lives better, not to make sweeping political points. And
very good point.
Should we be worried that a number of our NUS delegates that we sent along chose not to vote for her? They either ronned or voted elsewhere. Is that an issue that Warwick should be concerned about?
I don't know. I'm not sure if that's an extremely significant issue, because obviously that's the way democracy, I say in inverted commas, works. Sometimes you vote for the winner, sometimes you don't, and you've just got to live with the consequences. But if she does, like I said, if she does continue down this line of being quite aggressive towards Israel and sympathies along those lines, I do think we should disaffiliate from her, because it's not her job.
Do you think this election, moving on to a slightly broader issue now about the NUS, obviously the NUS has had a lot of problems for a while, regarding the banning or no platforming of speakers. Do you think an election such as the new president will harm that in any way? Or do you think the NUS will still be as bad as it is at allowing everyone a platform? No.
Oh, that's a difficult question. Well, I think from an NUS perspective, you have seen issues with various members within the NUS. I think it was the LGBT officer who did not want to share a platform with Peter Tatchell because he held transphobic views, which would seem ridiculous to a man who's dedicated his life to fighting for gay rights and the LGBT movement. I think that there's a lot of people within the organisation who have become, for want of a better word, a bit too precious about the situation and not wanting to confront issues straight on. I think that hopefully it won't affect Warwick as per se. Warwick's reputation, although there has been issues, I don't think the SU has ever banned a speaker from coming in.
Not permanently.
There was that incident with Miriam Namazi, which obviously caused a lot of controversy. However, the SU denied that, didn't they?
They did,
saying that it was a slightly different issue.
I think it was an error of process.
Was it really?
Yeah.
On that sort of broad point, Sam would like to say something.
No, I know, because we've gone more broad on no platforming, but I couldn't come on and not talk about more specifically the election of the new NUS president, is it?
Yes.
What do they call it? Chief of Staff? I don't know. Supreme Leader. I agree with Sam.
Dictator.
She's been elected. She has the mandate. Give them a chance. But I've been saying that about Jeremy Corbyn all this time. So, and I actually do disagree with you. You say it shouldn't be celebrated that first black Muslim.
Yes.
No.
I think. I think it is cause for me. I'm very happy that there is a female leader. Was the previous president a female as well?
She was, yes.
Yeah, a female leader, a black leader, Muslim leader. I believe cause for celebration. But, and this is a big but for me, I think when I saw the comments about Zionist media outlets, I come from a family. My father is a non-practicing Jew, and all my dad's family are Jewish, although the ones that are alive, none of us practice, and none of us are really anti-Palestine or pro-Israel. We're all just don't like innocent people being killed. But I read those comments, and to say that those comments aren't anti-Semitic, okay, she's not overtly saying I hate Jewish people, but I can't find any other way of interpreting those comments.
Right.
And this, I was even before this election of the new president, I've been talking about anti-Semitism, particularly on the far left, and how every other form of discrimination, whether it's anti-Muslim rhetoric or if it was anti-Hindu or anti-Sikh, and there'd be a lot more being made about it. But it seems if it's anti-Semitic or anti-Israel, it kind of gets brushed under the carpet, sort of thing. That's my view on anti-Semitism more broadly, particularly on the left.
That's an interesting point. And before I move on to some facts about the NUS and their recent survey about students in response to intimidating speakers, Sam, you had something to add on that?
Just one final thing. Picking up on something that Alistair and Sam said. Regarding the fact that she's obviously a black Muslim woman, does the fact that she sort of belongs to a group that's never possessed this kind of role before, does that sort of innovation compensate, do you think, or do you think it softens what she says? Because it seems to me that people seem perhaps more reluctant to criticise her and challenge views like this when they're expressed by someone who is also in a minority.
I think if it was a white, say middle class man who had been elected president,
or something.
if he said something,
Alistair, I don't think you think that.
If he said something anti-Muslim, there'd be a bigger deal made about it. But that could be a thing about whether is anti-Semitism recognised as a problem compared to other forms of discrimination. Because I don't think that it is on a level par with other forms of discrimination.
Okay, Alistair, I'll give you the final word on that.
Yeah, we're all adults. Virtually everyone in the NUS, involved in the NUS or universities as a whole, or student unions, is an adult. We're all thinking people, that's why we're here. You know what opinions you're expressing, and most people know where the line is. Or you could argue there is no line, there is simply what you find acceptable and what other people are likely to find completely unacceptable, and I think she's crossed it.
Okay, just a final word on that. I was reading in an article today, about the NUS and their policy to no platform people. Apparently 63% of us, university students, believe that the NUS has a right to no platform people, and 54% believe that someone should be no platformed if they are found to be intimidating.
What is no platform is banning someone from speaking.
It is banning, banning someone from speaking.
Because if I was in charge of finding a speaker for something, if I had seen those comments made by her or anyone else, I wouldn't invite that person.
Do you not think the point of freedom of speech, though, is to invite people who hold radical opinions on so that you can disagree with them? Yeah, exactly.
Well, that was the argument about whether we should let Donald Trump over here stuff like that.
Yeah.
I do see the point, but I feel like we've seen in America this sort of divisive, xenophobic narrative. People do latch onto it as kind of this whole blame culture where things aren't going well in your life, let's see who we can blame. This week it's the Jews, this week it's immigrants.
I think just to round things up on that point, sort of agreeing what Alistair had to say about the fact that we're all adults and we're all thinking people at universities, inviting these people into universities is surely important for us as students so that we can hear the full range of views and come to our own opinions of why we do disagree with them, and see that firsthand rather than just ignore the fact that it's there.
There we go. Fantastic. That was a very good debate. Thank you, everyone, for participating in that. Very lastly, the last thing I say on that is that the NUS, the final line of the article was that they are proud that these results have come out saying that people are standing up to racism and fascism.
Really?
So
they're
we go.
They're proud, basically, that people are sort of against freedom of speech.
There we go.
Undecided about that.
Moving on now, finally, just a couple of events coming up. The Warwick European Society have an event on the European Union on the 4th of May, which is a Wednesday at 6 p.m, and the two speakers confirmed are Toby Young, the renowned Eurosceptic, one would say conservative journalist,
spectator, editor, associate editor,
yes, and Hugo Dixon, who is the editor-in-chief of Infax, which will be a fantastic debate. And onto the Politics Society, we have our debate on the 12th of May, obviously much more important. Last thing on that, it is chaired by Stuart Croft, the Vice-Chancellor, their debate. But our debate at the Warwick Politics Society has Roger Helmer, the leader of UKIP in the European Parliament, and also obviously an MEP, Jim Cunningham, the Labour MP for Coventry South. It also has Baroness Burt, formerly Laurelie Burt, the MP for Solihull, and also Wyn Grant, the academic from the Pace Department, who is an expert, I'm told, in the EU's Common Agricultural Policy law.
With many other speakers to be announced.
Many speakers to be announced. Thank you very much for that. And just quickly, before we move on, we're going to have to cut the show slightly short today because we have an interview with Kate Smurthwaite, the controversial feminist and a comedian. But finally, we'll move on to the junior doctors, and here is what Jeremy Hunt has had to say on the strike.
The people who are responsible for what is happening today are the people who are choosing to strike. Striking, withdrawing emergency care, as you say, for the first time in NHS history is a choice. And all I would say is that we have had huge discussions over how we deliver a 7-day NHS. We've been having them now for over 3 years. We've had 75 meetings, but you can disagree with what the government's trying to do. We say that you can't choose which day of the week you're ill. We're actually putting into the NHS the 6th biggest increase in funding in its history. But what we know is that if you're going to improve the NHS, it isn't just about money. It's also about making sure that care actually gets better for patients. And as I say, you can disagree with the government's vision for a 7-day NHS, but is it proportionate or appropriate to withdraw emergency care from vulnerable patients? Because that's what's happening today.
So that was obviously regarding the first all-out strike in the history of the NHS. We've only got a little bit of time on this. So what do people think about this junior doctors' strike? Obviously it's based on the government's contract and the contract that the BMA want. Do we think that, I'll give you some facts, 13,000 operations have been postponed today, and 100,000 appointments have been postponed today, and there's been loads of cancellations of holidays and study leave. So do we think that this has gone too far? So obviously there can't be an agreement, it seems, with Jeremy Hunt, who has today said that, rather funnily, that his position as the health secretary will be his last big job in politics. I don't know if he had a choice in that. And also, do we think that the junior doctors have a right to strike? Ipsos Mori, which was obviously founded by Robert Worcester, who was on campus yesterday, Sir Bob Worcester, found that 57% of us support the junior doctors' all-out strike, 26% oppose, and the rest either don't know or support it. And finally, 54% blame the government, with only 8% blaming the junior doctors. Who is at fault? Sam, I'll move on to you for that. Do we think that junior doctors should have the right to strike?
The junior doctors are definitely correct to strike, and to say that they have chosen to strike, whilst it's accurate, but the government has forced them into that position by refusing to negotiate with the junior doctors. If you're the health secretary presiding over the first all-out strike in NHS history, your position must be untenable, regardless of whether people agree with your policy or whatever. If the relationship between the Secretary of State and the BMA and the doctors is now that toxic that they feel that the only way they can sort things out are by having the first all-out strike in the NHS history, you have to go.
Okay, and in a couple of sentences, because we haven't got enough time.
Sorry.
That's all right. Alistair and Sam, what do you think? We'll start with Alistair first. On the junior doctor strike, just a sort of broad couple of sentences. Are you for the strike? Do you think it's gone too far? Do you think the government are to blame?
I'm neither for or against. What I would say is, from my perspective, this is an issue that occurs in many state-run things when you don't let the market set the rate of labour. That's all I have to say on it.
Okay, and Sam, do you think the junior doctors have the right to strike?
It's a difficult one. To be honest, I think I'm leaning against it. To be honest, because I think the real victims in the whole issue are going to be the patients. Because you said earlier that I think it's about 125,000 operations and appointments have been cancelled. So that's going to hit ill old people hard, and I think that's the biggest tragedy of it all.
There we go.
And it's a shame it's come to this.
Thank you very much. That is it, I'm afraid, because we have our interview with Kate Smurthwaite now that I'm going to play. Thank you very much to our panellists for this week, and obviously to my fellow host Niall Johnson.
Thanks very much.
We've enjoyed it, haven't we?
We've loved it.
And join us next week at the same time of 3 to 4 on a Tuesday for that. And Noel, do you want to plug a sports show while you're here as our head of sport?
Oh, why not? Yes, tomorrow, listen in, between 6 and 7 for Raw Sport Midweek is the first of the term, and we've got plenty to discuss. We'll be discussing the World Championship snooker, discussing some of the football and the Indian
Grimsby
Premier League, as well as Tranmere.
That's an issue for another day, LGBT.
Tranmere versus Grimsby in the probably the most important match the conference has ever seen.
Right, on that, we will see you then. And finally, a plug from me, Unstruck Unscripted Ramblings on tomorrow from 3 to 4. Please tune in. Thank you again to our... Thank you very much, Niall. Thank you very much to our panellists and everyone who has listened in at home. That's it for now.
And I'm joined now by Kate Smurthwaite, who is a comedian, writer, left-wing feminist who is performing her show The Wrong Sort of Feminist here at Warwick University, and we're delighted that she is joining us here on Raw 12:51 AM. Firstly, Kate, what defines a feminist?
Well, it's very simple. I mean, it's in the dictionary. It means that you want women to have the same rights and opportunities that men have. It's strange because it gets such a bad press, the word feminists. People are always going, well, I'm in favour of equality, but not really comfortable with that word. And you're like, well, that's kind of what the word means. It's a little bit like going, oh, I love hardened milk, but please don't call it cheese. That's what the word means. Get over it. But am I allowed to swear on your radio station, Henry?
I can bleep it out.
Oh, you can, right. I understand, however, that some people... The media has distorted often what the word feminist means, and I understand that some people are not comfortable with it. That's totally fine. I don't care. As long as you're fighting for equality, you don't have to call yourself a feminist. I really couldn't care less what word you use. I personally, in any case, prefer the term radical patriarchy smasher. Bleep it will, Henry. Get your bleeper out.
Fantastic. And on the sort of cause of feminism, when you've come across the likes of Milo Yiannopoulos, and we had one of his troopers in the talk today, when he runs polls on Twitter saying, would you rather your kid had cancer or feminism, do you think that almost helps the feminist movement?
Well, I don't think it helps. I think actually it doesn't help at all, because what it does is it drags the debate in the wrong direction. So once upon a time we were having a conversation about, abortion is legal, but, there are various obstacles to getting it in the UK, such as 2 doctors' signatures, such as the fact that it's not legal in Northern Ireland, and, the fact that nurse practitioners can't prescribe early-term medication. And we could have been having a conversation about how can we improve access to that, and what can we do to make sure more offices have flexible working and childcare. And, we could have been having sensible, legitimate conversations. And now, suddenly, we're dragged into the world of, is feminism better than cancer? And it's stupid. I think that... I think that it damages feminism enormously, because suddenly we're having to have... it's not a debate worth having, is it? It's actually incredibly offensive to people who've got cancer. And the fact that people on his page would even answer that question says a lot more about the people on his page. And it shows you... what it does show you is how deep-rooted misogyny is in our culture. A long time ago, decades ago, Germaine Greer said, women have very little idea how much men hate them. Well, thank you, Twitter. Message received. We are now fully up to speed with the information that we were talking about. So in some ways it reveals what is out there, but I don't think it helps in the slightest. I think what it does is actually serve as kind of an echo chamber, and that unfortunately, young guys who are feeling a bit alienated by modern culture, and why wouldn't they? Because so do young women. We all do. It's life is not like the telly. Unfortunately, rather than looking to their peers and whatever to get information about how to build a life for themselves in the 21st century, they end up being convinced by people like this lot, like MRAs and pickup artists and all this lot, that the problem is that women are awful and have caused all the problems out there. And the level of vitriol is pretty scary. I think it's a sign that in some ways things are kind of going in the wrong direction.
You mentioned their supposedly legitimate conversations, and you went on Question Time about a year ago, or maybe even a year and a half ago. How was that experience, sitting along the likes of Ken Clarke, I think was on, Lord Oakeshott? So how was that?
I loved it. It's probably my favourite thing I've ever done in my life. I don't know. I love arguing. I don't like arguing with. What I hate actually is when a lot of what my show is about being banned from performing at Goldsmiths by other feminists. And I don't want to argue with other feminists. We don't have to agree about everything. I never want that. I'm not interested in that fight. I want to be arguing, with Ken Clarke, with David Cameron, with George Osborne, with Nigel Farage, if you like. I don't want to be bickering with people who are actually essentially overall on my side. I loved Question Time. When they said, who do I want to be on with, I was like, please, somebody in the current cabinet. Somebody in the cabinet. And since then, Ken Clarke has left the cabinet. And Lord Oakeshott has left the Lib Dems, and Emily Thornberry has stepped down from her role in the Shadow Cabinet. So I am basically the Buffy the Vampire Slayer of Question Time. You appear with me, your career is over. I loved getting the chance to sort of argue with Ken Clarke. Every point that came up, I was just like straight back at him. Lord Oakeshott, on the other hand, the once Lib Dem peer, now peer, is a lovely bloke. And we didn't agree on everything on air, but he's a top bloke, and he still comes comes and sees shows of mine and stuff like that, which is quite odd when after the show we're all having a drink and I'm like, oh yeah, this is my mate Dave, who I sometimes play badminton with. Oh yeah, this is Lord Oakshott. It does seem quite odd, although in fairness, I call him Matthew. I'm not. It would be odd if you were like, would you like a beer, Lord Oakshott? You only have to say that once when you introduce them. After that, you can get round to treating them normally. But no, he's a nice bloke. I like him.
You mentioned the Goldsmiths College incident just then, and today you had a Goldsmiths College Feminist Society T-shirt on. What happened there?
Well, what happened was that this time last year I was supposed to do my solo show at Goldsmiths, and some students said they might protest the event, and this caused the organisers to get into a bit of a panic and a tiz and cancel the event. And the story got into the media, and it became a part of a wider story about events being no platformed and cancelled and banned and this kind of stuff and free speech. And in the end I kind of wrote a show about it, although the show is also, as you saw, Henry, about lots of other things. It's about edible pants and being on Come Dine With Me and everything else that comes up, because it's a comedy show, and of course I try to make it in a way about much more than Goldsmiths, about much more serious things, but also about much more fun, silly, daft things.
Where do you see the feminist movement in 10 years, and have you seen any progress in the movement over the course of your career as a feminist?
There has definitely been progress. There are some brilliant things happening, often kind of below the radar, actually. Like, for example, because I've sort of mentioned abortion already, there's an amazing woman called Rebecca Gompertz. Some people call her the abortion pirate. I don't think she particularly likes the title, but Rebecca Gompertz is a fully qualified doctor. She lives on a boat 3 miles off the coast of Holland, which is therefore international waters. And she runs a website called womenonweb.org. And women in parts of the world where abortion is illegal can go on, if they've missed a period, if they think they're pregnant, they can complete an extensive questionnaire. She basically does like a full consultation with them to make sure that they're an appropriate candidate. And if they don't want to continue with the pregnancy, she sends them at cost price in an unmarked envelope the tablets they need to safely perform a medical early stage abortion. And that must have saved thousands of lives, because the other options for abortion in countries where it's not legal are, coat hangers and whiskey and, all sorts of horrific things. So there are amazing things going on, and there are people doing awesome things. And I think the Everyday Sexism Project is incredible. We've just lost page 3. It went, it's gone. So there is definitely progress being made. And then other times I look around and I think, oh my goodness, we've slipped backwards. It's sort of, oh look, we got rid of page 3, and then you look over and people are going, oh well, On the other hand, the rise of violent online pornography seems to be, pretty ubiquitous these days, and now suddenly all our schools are going to become academies, which means they won't have to teach any sex ed anymore. So there's a lot more to be fought for, but I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for doing it. So get involved.
And that's it as far as these serious questions go. But I have we do something called a quickfire round on the radio, where I'll ask you a load of quickfire questions. So firstly, who's going to be the next president of the US?
Hillary, maybe, is my best guess. If I could choose, it would be Bernie. But I think Hillary, and please one of them.
Political idol.
My political idol is John Oliver. Oh, I love that man. He's brilliant. Genius.
Comedic idol.
Still John Oliver. Always John Oliver. John Oliver all day. John Oliver. The British political comedian does a show in the US. I love that show. I'm a bit jealous. I would like it to be called Last Week Tonight with Kate Smurthwaite, but I love that show. It's the best thing to happen to comedy or politics for a decade.
Who is your favourite MP in the current House of Commons?
Oh, it's difficult because I'm friends with a few of them. I do like Caroline Lucas. She's usually in there quickly. Now, my MP is Diana, but you can trust her to... she's read out 1 or 2 of my letters in Parliament over the years of the old "a constituent rights," and I love to hear that and hear that it's going to be me. I'm trying to think if I've got any other favourite MPs. I guess I'll leave it between those 2 for now.
Favourite takeaway?
As in food, I'm a big sushi junkie, actually. If I can get sushi, I lived 4 years in Tokyo, so I'm addicted. It's got to be good quality. I don't want any of this yo rubbish. I want proper quality sushi, i.e. no mayonnaise.
Are you addicted to a TV show at the minute, i.e. Breaking Bad, House of Cards?
Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. That is my answer to all further questions.
Last couple. This one can't be John Oliver.
Oh, no.
Pro or anti-EU?
I think we should stay in the EU. I mean, it's not perfect, but I think the world is facing global environmental crisis, and that we have to cooperate with one another. We can't solve problems by being insular. So I think we have to stay in. Also, over the summer, I'll be doing a bit of teaching in Greece, and I don't want to have to fill in a load of paperwork.
Would you ever like to stand for Parliament?
Oh, I'd love to. I might do, but not for another 10 years. But I might do. Yeah, I might do one day. I mean, I'm a bit of a Marmite individual. I'm not sure that many political parties would want me on board, because I'm a bit of a marching into the thing, going, of course, religion is bollocks, and that kind of thing. I'm not sure which party would take me on, but yeah, one fine day when I've had my own TV show and written a couple of books, yeah, that might be something I might do one day. Yeah, why not?
This is going to sound like a horrible choice, but George Galloway or Milo Yiannopoulos, if you were forced to answer that one.
Well, George Galloway. I mean, I don't like the guy. I disagree with him on a lot of subjects. But you know, I mean, you could sit and have dinner with the bloke. You wouldn't. And sometimes he's wonderful. When he went to the U.S. Congress and called them all the, you know, whatever he called them, like, you know, the mother of all smoke screens and all that kind of stuff. He had his wonderful moments. Now, his comments about whether or not it's rape if you don't ask for permission prior to every insertion. I mean, if we could not bring that subject up over dinner, that would be preferable. But I'm not sure I've heard of the other guy. Milo, who was that? Not interested.
And finally, what's your favourite singer/band? And we'll play it after the interview goes out on air.
Okay, can I please have Once and Never Again by the Long Blondes?
You're listening to Your Raw.
Your Raw. Your Raw. On 12:51 a.m.